ik me glasgoed, zet me aan taal. Hamach richen eerst, nam geen agra. Akma mocht niet kachladim, shame me dan.
Languages revitalization. It's kind of a sort of paradoxical exercise I've got in mind because I'm going to be looking specifically at the output of Norman Maclean, who is really quite an exceptional exponent of all sorts of talents, and his linguistic capacity was phenomenal. But I'm looking at it through linguistic eyes, I would say. And of course, that all comes down to throwing light on the ordinary and the everyday quotidian speech of ordinary people. So that's the challenge, but I think that's fundamentally what linguistics is about, certainly for me anyway. So yeah, without further ado, we'll start, but we won't actually start with a PPT. I'm going to ask Sam if she's still here. Yes, I can see her, to show us a bit of a video first.
Can you all see a blank black screen now?
Half black and half gray.
It's curiously split in the middle.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let me stop doing that and start again. Same thing or better now?
Same
thing.
Okay. I don't know why that's happening.
When
You
you
might want to
share it,
share full screen.
We'll just do it that way, yeah.
hey, that's us.
That's us. We're going away. And then this now should be the video.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful.
There we go.
Okay, so that's Sir Harmich, Norman's World. Between Monday and Friday in May 16, I recorded Norman Maclean. He talked a lot about his memories and opinions.
Maar heet ik in Ruttek in een jaar of een Jew is te hun je. Ieder prima in de kustpunt er was. Ja. So hier Rut van mis maar je stak een Jew te loin. De Buringo geef eens gaan maar de hand te zien zak maar een beetje tasje goed le college.
O college. Isaac hulle go Hey. Mahad she Nilmore nach ian ewn rooi. A Kilmaloik Chidier Maclean. Hulle down Karen and the Jiddish Maclean horror. Ach sin mische tu Mahad. Gilek Nilmore nach ian ewn rooi. It tu madad. Madad Pekivik, nien aan de pietjuk, is aan de weken was zo, mehennevet, she nien in us is geen woord, haakles. So, als ik aan de toe, jongens de voos, mehennevet.
I think that'll do, Sam, thanks. Okay, so that's the man that we're going to be looking at, and what he's just given you there is a traditional Gaelic self-introduction, if you like, through his slonniu. Slonniu, basically, it's a naming system which relies on patronymics, not just patronymics, matronymics can come into it too. In fact, you've got both sides of his family there, I think. So that's an interesting contrast, perhaps, to the more traditional academic introduction, which you kind of gave me at the top of the show. I do also have my own slonniu, which it's nothing like as elaborate as his, but it's me and I'm the youngest son of Alma, daughter of Shoni, son of Gillespie. And that's really a point which I wanted to make at the start, about how people in the community actually know themselves and know each other. This is how it works, how you actually know who folk are. Okay, maybe I could share screen now and we could get the PPT up. Here we are. Are you seeing that? Guth Thormoid, the Island Voice of Norman Maclean. Yep.
Yes, we can see it.
Right. Okay. So let's just swing in. That's the title, Norman's Voice, Guth Thormoid. And then the Island Voice is in inverted commas deliberately, because Norman had many voices, and they weren't all island ones by any means. But what I'm going to be doing is concentrating on his contributions to the Island Voices or Guhen and Yelan project, which, as has already been explained, is the project which I coordinate. Okay, now I want to go to the next slide. Now, I'm looking at your PDF. I'm not looking at my PPT. Doesn't matter. We'll just go ahead with that. Right. So the plan is to basically make sure we're all on the same page with regard to who Norman is and what Island Voices is, first of all. So a short introduction to both of those. Then look in more detail at his contribution to Island Voices, particularly focusing on Cyril Hadamard, Norman's World, which you've just seen the first clip from there. And then, assuming there's time, we'll look at some spin-off applications at the end, which were quite unpredicted when we first started out on this journey, but which I would also say are natural progressions out of the fundamentally linguistic orientation of the project to begin with. Right. Okay, so I'm just going to do this scrolling down. This works fine. So who is Norman Maclean, first of all, or who was he, I should say? And you've got a screenshot there at the bottom. It's a wee grab from the Wikipedia page, the first paragraph. It really covers pretty well, well, as much as you can in a paragraph, something of the man, his dates, his many talents: comedian, novelist, poet, musician, broadcaster, without glossing over either some of his struggles and challenges which he had in his life, but which by the time I got to know him, he seemed to have got a handle on. So yes, he's a well-known and well-loved name in the Gaelic world. Just one further word about these screenshots. The PDF is in front of you now. You maybe have noticed that it's full of screenshots. They've all, almost all the images here, if you click on them, will take you through to hyperlinked web pages, which is what they refer to. Because this project is computer-based and computer-mediated, obviously makes sense when I'm talking about it to actually bring in shots from the project itself. So, yeah, my own personal acquaintance with Norman, as I'm saying, is somewhat limited. I didn't get to know him until he'd entered his 8th decade. So personal acquaintance is limited, definitely. I'm happy to vouch for his talents, which I was pleased to witness on various occasions, and also for his generosity too, particularly with his time, given the amount of time he gave to the Island Voices project itself. So when he passed, we did write our own tribute. You can see it here. It's written in Gaelic, but the top paragraph actually links through to a number of obituaries which were published in national and local press as well as online. So if you want to find out more about him, there's a possible first port of call. I am not a biographer. As I say, I'm going to look at this mostly from a linguistic point of view. But he's certainly a man who left his mark. As I say, multi-talented, and writing was obviously amongst those talents. His books here, you've seen both Gaelic and English, Gaelic in the middle, bookended by English titles. The English ones came last, in fact, and they're kind of semi-autobiographical, I would say. The last one published was the one on the right, The Eavesdropping, which came out very late in his life. It didn't stop him writing. He kept on, I'm pretty sure, pretty much to the end. He had another book which he was wanting to get published, the source of some trouble to him that he hadn't been successful. So in his 79th or 80th year, he started a blog with the title, If He Turns Up. A little bit of self-deprecation there. But you can look that up and you can get a taste of his writing online there too. So that's Norman. Talking about Island Voices, hangs about in various corners of the internet, principally on wordpress.com and youtube.com. We have floating, orbiting social media channels through Twitter and Facebook. And we call ourselves a language capture and curation project, which I hope is reasonably transparent. We record stuff and we disseminate it. The approach has been bilingual from the start. It's now multilingual, but Gaelic obviously has a central role given the Hebridean locus and focus of the project. It's all online, as I was saying, and there's free and open access across the world. And we do, I'm pleased to say, have followers from across the world, not just in the islands, which are the focus. Sometimes people might think that an insular focus means we're going to be introspective and exclusionary, perhaps. Not at all. That's not the ethos. So we're definitely open to everybody to come see. It's gone through various phases, starting back in 2005, going online 3-4 years after that, perhaps. Initially, it came out of a desire to do something pedagogical in terms of language learning and language teaching, looking at methods and methodologies and technologies. And that was very much a staff-led period where staff, basically myself, produced short documentaries to focus on a particular topic or venue in the community and complement those with talking head interviews with local members of the community who had a particular connection with that topic. Moved on from that staff-led approach to something far more participatory, encouraging local community members and local community groups to do the same kind of thing, basically, to collect or create recordings and then share them through our Island Voices websites. And that continues to be the ethos, I would say, as we go on. And you can see here that over the years, we've collected quite a few different pages, and they'll give you a sense of the range of the full Island Voices project. A page basically consists of a table or two, and in the table there are loads of links to the materials which we've created in various formats. And you'll see that Norman has his own page here, and we'll come back to that in light of the amount of material which he himself has produced over the years and of course its quality. This 150 figure here refers really to that staff-led phase I was talking about to begin with, which is the more pedagogically oriented stuff in series 1 and series 2. Since then, with the broadening out of the focus and the participation, we've more than doubled the number of videos which we have on the YouTube site to over 300. And as I say, the orientation itself has broadened from beyond being about language learning and language teaching to welcome the participation across the community, including in particular, I would say, from people to whom Gaelic has come as a natural function of being raised in a Hebridean home. So yes, we're pleased if we can continue to help people learn the language, and we think that by giving examples of language in actual use, we can help them do that while at the same time profiling language practice, as it were. A bit more about the title, Island Voices, probably self-explanatory. Island because of the islands. This is Benbecula here. These are the Western Isles, or the Outer Hebrides, or Nehelan and Sheer, or Nahin Shakal, several different names, depending on which language you're speaking. But worth pointing out, which is why I've done it, these pie charts here, which extrapolate from the 2011 census, which asked questions across Scotland about speaking Gaelic. And it's clear that in various local authorities, it's really only in the Outer Hebrides that you get such a significant proportion of the population speaking Gaelic, or claiming to speak Gaelic. At least this is census figures, so it's self-report data. And over here, you see the proportion as a proportion of the total population of Scotland. So there is a special connection between Gaelic and the islands. So that's why island. Let me take you on to why voices. I hope this rings bells with linguists. Here's some more statistics from the census. Blue column, speak, read, write, or understand. Orange column, speak, read, and write. So a clear discrepancy between people who speak the language and the number who read and write it as well. And you know, Island Voices is about oracy. It's about the primacy of speech. That's what we want to actually address and indeed profile. It's kind of perverse, given that, you know, the best speakers of Gaelic, being the people who have been brought up speaking it, if you like, have not necessarily received an education through it. So they're certainly literate, there's no problem there, but their literacy is in the other language. So let's not let these folk feel that their skills are not being properly recognized or valued simply because they don't read or write. We need to actually profile the spoken language, and that's what Island Voice is primarily about, I think. Here endeth that lesson. Okay, so where's the intersection then between Norman and Island Voices? I'll take you through some of these screenshots, which trace the history in a sense. Over on the left here, this is an example of that staff-led beginning to the project, where we had topics and we had staff-produced short documentaries, but also talking head interviews with people associated with the topic. And here's an extract from the table that you get when you actually click on the Island Voices Enterprise page tab. And you'll see the bilingualism, English on the left, Gaelic on the right. The topic is the Impepper community newspaper, so there's a short documentary about that in kind of plainer, call it teacher talk language if you like. But then the interesting part from the authentic speech point of view is the talking head interviews which follow, and you'll see Tarawat Maclean or Norman Maclean listed there. This comes from around 2010. Moving into the middle, where we're going participatory and we're involving local individuals and groups. We created a page called Storytellers because one of our language Island Voices activists, Mary Morrison, was keen to go out into the community and record people telling stories. So first port of call was naturally Norman, and we got a couple of his stories at the top of that table. So the genre you've got there is plain narration, if you like. It's good quality narration because it's a master raconteur who's telling the story. And the second example I've given you there is actually from our Great War page, which was led by the North Uist Historical Society, Cumaniachti Uistchatua, in 2014, marking the 100th anniversary of the outbreak of World War I. Again, local society members made local recordings in the community, and one of them was a recording of Norman actually reciting one of his own compositions to local school children in the Cavendish School, where his mother had in fact been a pupil a long time ago. But moving over to the right, I'm coming onto Norman Maclean's own page. It's got two parts to it. Number 2, Skialoch and Haramich, and number 1, Sir Haramich. Skialoch means stories. This was his initiative. He came to us, and this was, although it's listed as number 2, it's actually the first of these two parts chronologically. So he came to us because he wanted to record some of his short stories, very humorous on the whole, which he'd been writing for the benefit, essentially, of young people who might want to get up on stage and do a recitation, for example, in a local competition, or even at the National Maud. He was keen to get those recorded and available for people to view. So we did that very happily, because, you know, just at the quality of the speech that comes from his mouth. And that sparked, very soon thereafter, Sir Haramich, Norman's World, because the director of SAISH, Professor Crocker O'Gilligan, close colleague of myself and Crevin, spotted Skialoch and said, we need to do more of this. Let's get back in there and see if he'll just tell us about his life. Because, you know, he's lived a good while and he's seen a lot. So that's really where we're going with Sirvil Haramich, Norman's World. I was given the incredible privilege of going into his house on consecutive days for a full week, just to let him speak and to record his words. So that's where we're going next. And the format here is taken from the site, actually. There's going to be a different slide for each day. It'll give you the topic. It'll give you the summary, which is printed, of the conversation. And up here, if not now, you can click that link and actually go straight to the video. And I'll also be highlighting one or two quotes just to make particular points of interest. So here we are. How can I get rid? Oh, there you go. Every Gael knows who he is. Norman talks about his genealogy on both sides of the family and how these family networks played an important part in his early upbringing in Glasgow, Lochaber, and Benbecula. He has clear memories of his paternal grandfather teaching him songs, and his maternal grandmother, meanwhile, migrated to Glasgow from North Uist and never learned to speak English, functioning socially just within the Gaelic-speaking community of Glasgow at that time. He also reflects on community relations as experienced in his childhood. What I want to highlight here is the genealogy, obviously, and we'll come on to that when we look at the quote. The comment on the Gaelic, because obviously that is a key theme, but also the introduction of social commentary right from the start. He was offering this, it's a theme which runs throughout all 5 days of the conversation, but he was constantly contextualizing what he was telling us by explaining what was happening around him at the time. So I don't need to read out that quote because you've already heard it. But this is just giving you the nuts and bolts, if you like, of that genealogy. The patronymics, note that they're not to the exclusion of matronymics too. His mother was a big influence on him, very clearly. His father died when he was actually quite young. Also, there's more to Slunyu than just son of, daughter of, son of, grandson of, granddaughter of, etc. Quite often, other attributes are mentioned. So Neil Moore, Big Neil, Peggy Vic, Wee Peggy, so on and so forth. So these things come into it too. Nicknames also come in. So that there's quite a lot to that. And it's a really handy way of placing you, as I say, and just making sure that everyone knows who you are. The second quote here, I will read a bit out of. This is him talking about his grandmother and explaining about her Gaelic and her English language skills. What he said was this: "Ach, she callioch smart of each, but who's me vages, nor het dan een glasocha, ha rukkigi les perle wie echt. Uit het geheil, Michel, agus vigi, toen je brengt me in Muslim isolation is graag. Had er een erts en bi perle inzig." I won't carry on, but maybe just pick the rest up in English. That his grandmother didn't speak any English. She didn't need to. She had a daughter and a son who would look after those kind of things for her. And if she needed entertainment, she would go and visit other Gaels in Glasgow. So there's social commentary running there, and it's not just about then, but it's also about now, because this point about Muslim isolation stands out, doesn't it? I need to explain here that this recording was made in 2016. It was around the time when a national report was in the news, which affected to be concerned about community integration in the UK, and expressed some worries about levels of English language skills amongst certain communities. And Norman wasn't having any of that. It didn't impress him at all that this was considered to be a matter of some concern, that when people moved in a community to a new place, they continued speaking their own language, particularly if they had other people in their community around them. So there we are. He remembered what was happening at the time. He links it to what was happening now. Second day, education. And I'm not going to read out this summary. The points are that he goes through his educational journey. Note that it's not just in Glasgow, but it also includes primary schools in the Highlands and in Benbecula. These were during the war when he was evacuated out of the big city. They're full of rattling yarns, these stories. If I can just give you a quick taste, I mean, Cremola crops up, so does Louis d'Or. But I won't say any more than that. You'll actually have to go and listen to find out more about that. The point here is that community relations are figuring again. He's talking about Glasgow and this very dominant and obvious Catholic-Protestant divide as it was felt in the parts where he lived. And also the relationship between Gael and Gaul, between Gaelic speaker and non-Gaelic speaker. These were salient points for him as he was going up through his education. But he goes on with his quote 3 from this particular educational part of the list of conversations. Isn't it strange how my mind worked when I was small? When I was Glasgow folk with the children, there were only 2 choices in the world. There were only tribes. There were only 2 tribes, Protestant and Catholic. They never came together. But isn't it strange? With the kids from South Uist, Eriskay Barra, the Catholics, in other words, there was nothing, there was no obstacle. But with the Glasgow folk, it was clear. It was just in black and white. And isn't it strange? This gap between them is in my head still. So what I'm taking from that was that now he's very conscious of these contradictions, which made perfect sense to him at the time. So he's open about his own prejudices and about their lasting impact. He's still a showman, but he's at a mature stage now in his life, and he's able to openly actually self-question, which is all great from our point of view if we're looking to get, informed comment from a good observer. There is this self-questioning element running throughout his commentary throughout as well. Okay, I've kind of gone quite quickly through education. Wednesday was communities, when we actually get to talk about them specifically, as it were. He hasn't stopped talking about them from the start. But here, as you can see, it's a longer summary, and it was a longer session because it's a much deeper dive into some of these issues. If I can summarize the summary, he's talking about different kinds of group membership and how they rub along or rub up against each other, different kinds of identities experienced, depending on the categories, and they could be language, they could be religion, they could also be skin color or skin tone. So there's a lot there, including explicitly racial implications. A slur which is usually associated or given to by those who do this kind of thing. It's used against people of South Asian heritage in the UK. And Norman and his friends who were speaking Gaelic to each other in the playground or wherever might have this slur applied against them, but prefaced with the word white. So stop that, you white. You talking about me? This kind of thing. It's the kind of thing which, part of the community relations aspect of life as he grew up in the Glasgow. So that's all in there. Again, though, what I'm going to pick out is a topical comment relating to what he was seeing, relating to all of that, to what he was seeing in today's world. He's talking about the boundaries and the horizons which people might feel, and pointing out the difference between between Glasgow folk and Gaelic folk in Glasgow in those days, but saying, but both have changed a lot. Everybody is distanced from each other, and they get to know each other through the devices. They're not close to each other at all. And it's the same thing in Glasgow as it is down in Cal and Grimsay. People aren't, they're as it were, isolated from each other in Glasgow and in the Gaeltacht. So he's not sparing in his contemporary critique. He keeps his beady eye open all the way through, including on the generations around him today in Grimsay, where he was living. Okay, I kind of feel I'm rushing this, but I feel also we need to get to the end. Creativity was our Thursday topic. He talked about his influences in all the various different media in which he operated. I'm going to pick out the name Billy Connolly there. Because when he first came across it, it was a barrier to him because of the Irishness of the name, and he was open about that. But also because he was quick to go on to say that this is the man from whom he gained the most influence as far as his comic work was concerned. And once he'd seen Connolly's act, that's the one he wanted to model himself on. And again, there's this issue of pigeonholing, if you like, the social categorizations, which he kind of felt himself being pinned in, but resisting at the same time. So Gaelic comedian would be the label that he would often be given, even though he himself felt that there not only there was no such thing, but actually there could be no such thing. Anyway, so that's Thursday and creativity. No, it isn't, because I want to actually give you a taste of some of his poetry, just to break up the flow for a bit. I'm no literary critic, and I've just selected a verse here from a poem which he recited during the recording. You'll hear the rhyme and the rhythm, if nothing else. He earned himself a bardic crown at the Maud. I think he would say that his taste was more traditional than modern. He professes not having a great deal of love for the work of Sora Maclean, for example, the biggest known name in Gaelic poetry of the time when he was at university. But anyway, this is his one of his verses. Ved mi lúg herchach de veltjen bria maganje. Een balasher spalavich kvaal, moch efors des en geules. Inchi mich en drast, den viao gaat je aan mi kirchlich. Schatjerik rijg me graag, het han jol skeurtje. So there, that will just give you a taste of what it sounds like. Thematically, I would just highlight the third and fourth lines here, which is simply a repetition of North US place names. That is all the line is place names. And perhaps there's some resonance there with the growing interest, it seems to me, in the link between language and land, perhaps, which seems to be attracting revitalizationist interest to some degree. Okay, last day was talking about Gaelic itself. And again, it was another long session. The main points, which probably were covered, would be the importance of bilingualism, how this plays into the Gaelic dynamic. He also wanted to talk about how literacy, learning to read and write, helped him, and we also felt that this could be an aid with language learning if you're going about this the other way around, coming from English to Gaelic rather than Gaelic to English. And then coming back to the importance of the cultural identity in shaping the transmission of the language, if you like, and the importance of the language in the transmission of the culture and the identity, and his own willingness and commitment to pass on that knowledge to others. He does include a reference to your previous president. I'm assured I'm not skating on too thin ice if I reference it. The commentary is, of course, sociolinguistic rather than political, but let's just have a look at it. Hodw, wel, can you lack up ach kate is mach gradi Holland. Che en boemelers, de staat je nu niet, je Donald Trump. Ach, nou, de wist de kate het met deunje. En je toe, je wil het, en je die toch, je wil het aan je lach. Ach, je wil het le. En je schees kudig, en je lach kach, en je gaan. Als je kan vaak uitmaken, big, en een ghetto beerle. His point, looking through the translation, is that if you are restricted to one language, your horizons are narrowed. There's a danger that you get stuck in an English ghetto. He makes the point quite forcefully by the reference I've already mentioned, but he does it, first of all, through the slonju rather than the name itself. And as you're probably aware, Donald John, his mother actually came from Stornoway. So we have a claim on him too, you know. And it's that introduction of the character through the slonju which places him. It's placing the target in the circle of the intimates, which makes the point so forceful, if you like. You know, we kent your father, well, your mother in this case, but so, you know, not much gets by us, if you like. We know who you are. I think that's basically the import of what's coming through by that use of the slonju. So he could be quite acerbic in his commentary, but at heart, as I say, there was a tremendous generosity there, fueled by his need to represent his culture, in a sense. So his final comments were, if there's anyone out there, if anyone sees your film eventually, I'd be very willing to pass the words and the tunes on to them. He's talking about the poetry that he's recited or the songs that he's talked about, because I got them for nothing, and anyone who's interested in them, they'll get them for nothing too. And that was his sign-off. And it seems to me it's quite a good one, particularly given his role, if you like, of tradition bearer, and his need to pass the tradition on to the best of his ability. So that's the end of Sir Haramich. It's not quite the end of his involvement in Island Voices, because there was added after that, posthumously in fact, another page titled Talking Points, and you can see that he has a central part in that. What we did was we took extracts from the Friday conversation, short extracts from the Friday conversation, and we used them to spark discussion, social linguistic discussion between academic linguists in University of the Highlands and Islands, University of the West Indies, Amity University, Haryana in India. So academics alongside UK-based heritage language speakers on the ground, if you like, of South Asian, Caribbean, and as well as Hebridean background. So it's a bringing together of theoreticians and community practitioners. Professions include teacher, poet, interpreter. Each of them had more than one profession. Talented individuals themselves and specific interest in language. So there was probably about 20 minutes of extracts, and that produced 3.5 hours of discussion, all recorded and all also online. If you want to dip into any of that. I've got a short example here, sample extract from the first discussion. Let me just point out that we divided them up into 3 different topics: language endangerment, language hierarchies, and language contact. So all of these, I would hope, would be of interest to folk interested in language revitalization. Here's, if you go to that link there, you'll get Crocker O'Gilligan, who I've already mentioned, the lead author of this study, which came out 2 years ago, The Gaelic Crisis in the Vernacular Community, enormous tome full of really detailed quantitative information. It's not purely quantitative volume, though it's certainly heavily quantitative in comparison with anything that went before. You'll see on the left there, Crocker's comments on Norman's extract, and 5 points which he extracted from the extract, if you like. So these are the things he picked out just from listening to 7 minutes. The implications of post-war societal change, the importance of social density, youth socialization processes, social subordination of a minority culture, and differentiating competence and vernacular communicative ease. These being important categories in his own mind, which he saw being corroborated in this kind of qualitative ethnographic material which he was getting out of the Norman's World recordings. Going on quickly to other applications. Really don't need to say much at all about this one because we've got the progenitor in the audience, Clillstore. But basically, yeah, where am I? I'm losing my notes now. In Searle Hadamach and in Island Voices throughout, what we have is reasonably good quality audio material, spoken material, coupled with verbatim transcriptions. So this can be used in all sorts of different ways. It can be used in learner-friendly contexts, and that's what Clillstore is about, its origination at least, that you have media plus transcript plus dictionary lookup, all available at a single click. You can watch and listen, you can read at the same time. A word that you don't know, you can click on it and there comes the translation. So that's Clillstore in 2 seconds. Sorry, Kevin. But this combination of audio plus transcript is useful in other contexts too. So all of the Searle Hadamach material has gone into DASC as well, the Digital Archive of Scottish Gaelic, held at Glasgow University, where given the orientation towards a vernacular model to be used in new grammatical description, for example, this kind of material, both Norman's material and other stuff coming out of Island Voices, is going to be particularly useful, particularly when it comes to developing a spoken corpus in addition to what's already there. Again, I don't need to say much about automatic speech recognition or about the guy who's behind that, Will Lamb. You've had him on already. So the benefit here was entirely mutual, because Will, when he was starting that up, he needed good quality audio with transcriptions so that he could start building his model, his tool. And what we got back from that was his alignment tool, which helped us then to start inserting automatically, with a little bit of manual adjustment, subtitles into our YouTube videos. And then, so now we have Gaelic videos with Gaelic subtitling, and through the wonders of Google Translate, you are then able to secure automatic translations into scores of different languages as well. Okay, other applications is left as a question mark, basically posing a question. Maybe you have ideas. There's certainly plenty more to investigate. For example, perhaps around bilingualism. The final clip, which there may or may not be time to play, the link is there anyway, it shows an example of really mixed up, not in a pejorative sense, but really interesting, put it that way, code mixing between English and Gaelic from Norman, who was perfectly fluent in both languages, of course. And I don't want to end without these final words of appreciation of the man himself and what he gave to Island Voices. His talent was enormous, but his generosity was also extremely capacious. And he gave us plenty to think about, but he allowed us to enjoy thinking about it at the same time through his fantastic presentation skills too. That's the end of my spiel. There are links there if you want to follow up. Those are the affiliations, Sailsha, Solmarostek, UHI Language Sciences Institute. I think I've mentioned all of those in the talk. They're important supports for all of this work that has gone on. The clip at the end has full subtitles burned in. There's a reason for that. Final point would be, yes, Norman was an exceptional exponent of Gaelic and, well, just linguistic competence generally. So there's perhaps a danger there if you think about the orientation which I expressed at the beginning about throwing light on the ordinary language of ordinary people. To what extent can you really extrapolate from exceptional exponents to ordinary people? I think there's 2 points I want to say in relation to that. He was a brilliant comic, and you can't make people laugh, actually, if you don't speak to them in their own language, if you don't reach them. And he certainly did that. He was grounded, exceptionally grounded, I would say, alongside all the other talents he had. So the voice was demotic, definitely. Lastly, the model that we produced there for Searle Hadamach is one we've developed since then and taken out into the community. There's another tab on the site called Status Bio, live resource, if you like. Status Bio and Gale. It's on the on the Language Sciences Institute site as well, where we've used that format, just putting two cameras down in front of two people, letting them talk and recording what they say. And we've got 50 videos now in that collection as well. Right, sorry, I've gone over time and didn't expect to go on quite so long. And it's partly my own fault also for joining you late.
No worries. Thank you. Let's thank our speaker. Thank you for a great, that was a fascinating talk. And I think we all appreciate very much Norman's contributions as well as your own. We are over time, but we might take a few moments for questions. I have lots, but I'll just check to see if anybody else has any first before me. Okay, well, I'll go. first have a comment. One thing, this research group is located in Arizona, where there are lots of Native American communities. And one interesting parallel that I've seen many times, and I've discussed this with Muriel at length, is there is a very similar sort of means of introduction and community connections where among Native peoples here, where you introduce your matrilineal clan, you introduce your paternal clan, you talk about where you're from, you talk about where they're from, and it's striking. And I've noticed this before when I've been in Scotland, what I call the Coassahaus, where they want to know where you're from so they can figure out who you are. So that's just a comment, but it's really striking how similar the pattern is. My question you partly answered by saying you worked with Will Lamb. We have a quite independently of Island Voices. We sort of didn't know it was happening. We got a National Science Foundation grant to go to Scotland and do documentation recordings. And we probably have about another 60 hours, maybe more. And our biggest challenge has been, our goals are slightly different. Our goals, of course, are language description. So we're trying to build an audiovisual corpus that we can tap for phonological means and syntactic analysis. But we're also doing documentation at the same time. But our biggest challenge has been the transcription. Poor Muriel has spent half of her life recently typing up transcriptions manually. And then my GAs here have spent a lot of time doing glossing and marking up the videos. And it just strikes me that we might have an opportunity to collaborate and provide you with those recordings. They're mostly from Skye and Harris. But I sort of had a question about, did you do any manual transcriptions, or did you just from the start have it all automatically done?
Oh no, all manual.
All manual.
All manual. Until really quite late on. I'm not going to speak for Will. I think he would say, though, that his work is still work in progress. So we have experimented a little with one of Norman's stories, in fact, a couple of Norman stories, which are now subtitled on YouTube. The short stories, the Scialach and Hannah. We actually did a short experiment with our transcriber that who we'd been employing to do stuff with Storasbjorn and Gale. We actually gave him 2 short stories, same sort of length, and said, right, do one of these manually and put the other through the ASR tool. It's work in progress. There's still a significant error rate coming out, or at least there was at that time, and there's probably been progress since then. There was the error rate coming out of the automatic transcription was such that it really put that together with the tendency of errors to actually set you off on the wrong track sometimes. It meant that it wasn't really saving significant time at all. But that's just a very small initial experiment.
But where Will's tool shines is it can do automatic alignment, give you the timings.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That was.
Yeah. So our team is right now we're using Elan, the tool for video mapping, and right now I have TAs going in and putting in manual breaks in the videos so that when we finally do get transcriptions, we can align them. Okay. It is a bit of a nightmare. We've also had trouble because we need 3-line glosses. We don't just need 2 levels. We also need a word by word and morpheme by morpheme translation for kinds of research we do. And we have an automatic tool that one of our students wrote for this, but frankly, it gives, I don't know, Luis is working on it. I would say probably 60% accuracy. It still saves some time, but you know, if you just take all the words that are the letter A in Gaelic, it confuses them all the time. You know, so that's very interesting. I was wondering if you, because you have such a great selection of materials, I was wondering if you had done it manually or if you had.
Manually, there's a lot of hours went into that.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, I'm hoping we can collaborate at some time and we can share what we've got and with you. And one of our other problems is the way we're storing the data is in a database here, an archive here, but we want to make sure that it starts getting back to the community as well. So I'll be in touch.
Sure, do. I mean, community connection is so important for Island Voices in particular. And we're kind of arm's length. Obviously, we work closely with Thormoid, with SAISH, with the Language Sciences Institute. You know, in various ways, I'm employees of all three. But we are not those institutions. We are a bridge, I would say, between academia and community. Well, that's what we want to be.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
Quick comment on Clillstore. If you have a video or sound file and a transcription, which is a hard thing, you can fling them into Clillstore and automatically every word is linked to online dictionaries. Now, for Native American languages, you maybe don't have good online dictionaries, and something that Gordon's been involved in just in the lead up, especially in the lead up to Christmas, is a international collaboration. If you look in Clillstore, there's Jamaican and Okinawan, which don't have good online dictionaries. I developed a custom dictionary facility with it makes it easy to add in, compose your own dictionary on the fly with headwords and variants. So anyway, if you want to see how that works, have a quick look at Jamaican probably.
You'll find that in the other tongues page tab on the Island Voices site. So while you're all here and you're talking about Native American languages, we don't yet have any Native American languages in the other tongues site. But basically what that is taking some of our documentaries and revoicing them in other languages. And so Jamaica's there, Okinawan's there, Algonquin is not, but maybe that could be something that you might be interested in at some stage. We're open.
Excellent. Any other questions from the group or comments? Well, go ahead, Sam.
Oh, I just had a very quick comment. First, I just want to thank you again, Gordon, for coming and talking with us today. But also, I was just wanting to say, you know, on the Native American languages theme that we've been oscillating around, the work that you got on Island Voices, to me, seems like a really good way to sort of fill some of the gaps that communities here are experiencing, where there's a lot of great materials for the very beginning learners, and then there's a lot of great materials for people who already speak. But when you're in this intermediate stage and wanting to just have more exposure to the language, you can't always be talking with your elders, etc. Having this sort of like online repository to just go and hear the language, and the way you've got it integrated with the the transcript and the dictionary, that just seems like a really good tool for that group of learners. And I think that's a large group that needs attention. So I just wanted to mention that sort of inspired me to start thinking about that as an option. And I'm hearing a lot of feedback, so I don't know if that's on me, but I'm going to stop. I'm going to mute. But thanks again.
Oh, cool. That's really good to hear. Thanks very much, Sam. for that point. It sounds like you're thinking along exactly the same lines that we were thinking on when we did what we did. So if we can help in any way, or continue to share ideas, fantastic. Thank you for making the connection. Let me just sincerely repeat my thanks at the beginning. It's been a delight to meet you all, and to share the company of linguists.
Thank you, Gordon.